Welcome back, beautiful people. This is another episode of An Untold Narrative. And today's guest, Michael Esiobu, which I hope to God I got that correct, is joining us from Milwaukee. I think you are our second guest from Milwaukee to ever join the podcast. You are a brand builder. You have your own agency. You have your own podcast. You even got in a ring and got punched in the face, which I'm super excited to talk about. Dude, I can't thank you enough for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This is I don't really get a chance to do a lot of these type of podcasts, just one-on-one type of thing. So it's kind of something I'm looking forward to as well.
Hell yeah. No, definitely agreed. So I just rifled off, let's say, 5 major things that somebody might prioritize and only do one in their entire lifetime. You do those 4 or 5 all at the same time. How do you, what's like I like to ask people just as a kickstart for those who are unfamiliar with you and your work. How do you introduce yourself? Like, what's your 30-second elevator pitch about yourself?
That's an interesting one. I usually just introduce myself as my name is Michael Esiobu, and I'm a creator, and that's it. And then I just let the conversations kind of dive into wherever, like, different aspects they kind of want to ask about it, because I feel like there's so many different sides to what I do, because I have a podcast of my own. I box. And I create content, I shoot content. I help other brands create short form content as well. And I also part of a clothing brand with my friends called Unfinished Legacy. So it's a lot of moving parts. I'm still working on, to be candid, I'm still working on trying to balance everything, and then also balancing like my personal life as well, because I feel like I'll just take you back a little bit. When I born in Nigeria, grew up in Chicago all my life, then went to high school in Nigeria in boarding school. And after I got back, I still wanted to play football, because I played football in 8th grade. So I ended up in Sheboygan. I graduated. Then I had the chance I was in an NFL mini camps for 2 years. I was with the Giants in 2016. And I was with the 49ers in 2017. And after that stuff didn't pan out, just got, normal marketing job at a healthcare company. And I knew that wasn't what I really wanted to do. And lucky for me, and it's a weird thing that I say, like, my position got eliminated. So I basically got fired. And getting fired was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I don't think I would have took that leap into like entrepreneurship and trying to build something on my own if I didn't get fired, because everything was comfortable. I went to work, did what I had to do, and I got paid. I knew I was going to get paid this amount every 2 weeks. So I can budget right. I can do everything right. And when that happened, it just gave me the push, and like I never want to be in this position again where I can get fired, or this is my chance to actually build something. So yeah, I took the opportunity and put, effort into what I want to build as a creator.
And so now, what year was that?
That was in 2019, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So super recent. So let's call it over the past 4 years, right? Let's call it 4 or 5 years. You've been figuring it out. And seemingly, if somebody looks at your socials, you've quote unquote had a tremendous amount of success by, call it all standards. When you get fired, your job gets eliminated, you're like, where do you start? Because I think that's the hardest part, is for anybody listening, if they're ever considering doing something different or for themselves or out of the control of others, the hardest part is starting. And so for you now manage 5 different things, but like they all had to come from something. And so what was that trigger moment?
I think the trigger moment was always like there for me. Like since I was a kid, my dad was an entrepreneur. So I always saw him, try to build businesses. But I would say he was more like a hustler, right? So he hustled a lot. He would import stuff to Nigeria, and then throughout college, I actually created with a friend. We created a IG page with for art to feature people's art, right, in college, and it grew to like 2.7 million followers, and yeah, so end up selling the page. Just like so, I always had the knack for social media. I always, as a kid, my dad would like get these like he would go to pick up some computers and stuff like that, and this company would give him like free peanuts, and I always wanted to go and like I would go out in the street and just sell the peanuts and stuff like that. So it's just like I always had that like I always said I want to be my own boss, and I think when the NFL stuff didn't happen, and I was like, okay, I've been not working for 2 years doing this NFL thing and just going into camps and stuff like that. I just want to get a job right now and be comfortable. And once I was comfortable and everything happened, I just like even during my job, it was just like sometimes I would go in and it was like nothing to do. So I just
Mm.
started learning skills. Started learning skills on the side, which like I learned photography on my own through YouTube. I learned how to edit through YouTube, and um, I just started studying what was out there, not just to consume content, but to see like why this was going viral. And I just always knew I could had the knack of trying to make things go viral, or just knowing what's a viral piece of content. So I always had that thing I knew I was going to do next. I already knew what I was going to do next. The writing was on the wall at work, and it was like there's nothing to do. So I'm like, hey, they're not going to keep paying me when there's not much work to do anymore. And so I just already kind of knew that. But for like anybody that's like in a position where they feel like they don't want it, I think just it's going to be a lot of hard work at the beginning, where it's just like
Mm.
learning a skill that can solve somebody's problem. And that was the main thing I was trying to learn. And I got it. And I first got into it, just like, hey, social media marketing, and I want to learn how to run ads. And the first person I ran ads for was a solar company, and I wasn't that good at running ads I didn't know how to run ads at all. So I said, hey, can I run your ads for free? I won't lose you any money, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna make you a whole bunch of money. And then that worked out. I started doing pretty good with that, and just keep learning. Like what, even when you apply for jobs, I think a lot of like just like normal. I hate to call anybody's job normal, but just like the normal conventional like corporate jobs, right? Most of the learning happens on the job. So I think that's the same thing with any type of thing. I'm not saying fake it till you make it, but get some of the initial information by studying, doing the study on your own, whether it's buying a course or YouTube is free, and finding a way to apply that, whether it's charging somebody for a low fee for your first time, or just saying, hey, I just want to do this to get a case study and a testimonial from you. And that's basically what I did. And it led me to running ads for like 50 solar companies at one time.
Holy shit. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know if any of the listeners have ever tried to run ads. I once tried to do it for an arts council that I'm on, and there's like a layered process on even just Facebook
Yeah.
alone. And it's like kind of overwhelming. And you're just like, call up the solar company to like, fuck it, I don't know if I'll make you money, but I'm going to do this for.
Yeah. Yeah. I just tried to do everything. I learned to build simple websites. Like one of the this is something I hope your listeners, like especially your younger listeners, can take advice from too. Is like I started off even just building websites. I just found out anything I can do to help companies, and like I stayed in the solar niche because I could build a website on this thing called Webflow, right?
Mhm.
Build a template, and then I would just reuse the template for other solar companies and just like change up the colors, the words, the pictures, and stuff like that. But I had a template where I could charge $2,000 per website, and just have to change a few things, but just had to do the work one time, and then just reach out to, hey, think your website can look better. I have this website, and just have those type of things. So yeah, it's just about finding whatever problem a company business can be having, and trying to see if you can be the solution to that.
This is fucking amazing, dude. I had no idea what I was walking into. For any of the listeners, uh, Mike is one of those. We've actually met in person at VCon or last
Yeah.
year, and very briefly, but we don't know each other super well. So I actually had no idea what kind of stories we were going to get into, and this is like blowing me away. But now again, I'm trying to play catch up here. It's like you figure this out, you do these ads, you do this marketing, you blow up these pages. How do you find the things that you do today, right? Because you know, as somebody, myself included, like I like to try a lot of shit. And then like, if I gravitate towards something or if I fall in love with it, then I'll do it for a longer period of time. Right. But the things I don't
Yeah.
really love, then I just kind of drop them or they go by the wayside. But like, you've now found these like pillars, whether it's a clothing brand, whether it's a podcast, and like, how do, like you started from doing ads from solar. Like, how did you find these things that you were really innately good at or fell in love with?
I think the biggest thing for me was always networking. And I'm in person, like I'm a really quiet dude. I'm really like keep to myself a lot. Like I don't, and I was doing that for so long, and and it came to a point where it's like I need to start like having conversations with people. And like the first solar client I got was at a gym. I was just doing my own thing, and a guy came up to me, was just talking to me, and we're just having a normal conversation just about like weightlifting and basketball, and started learning about each other. And like, oh, I have a solar company. I was like, oh, I'm trying to do ads. And then boom, that type of stuff. So networking has really been like a big thing. Like how I got with the clothing brands with my friend Bremer, who's the founder. He's been doing the clothing brand stuff since he was high school, but it was more of a passion project than an actual business. And when we met really through just photography, because I was getting into photography. Like I had my own photography page, and I was all in with photography, and he was good at photography as well. So we met through that, and then figuring out the photography stuff. He's like, oh, he has a clothing brand that he started in. During COVID, he actually his business kind of he worked with an agency as well, just kind of doing video and photography and stuff like that. He co-owned with some friends. You actually probably know Izzy.
Oh yeah, Izzy Lugo.
Yeah. So yeah, they work together.
Oh, okay.
They were business partners. And then when that happened during COVID and stuff like that, he started posting a lot more on TikTok, and well, TikTok at the time, and got a couple million view video and another million view video. And then things was just like, well, this stuff is getting serious. So we that happened, and obviously the brand has gone multiple places with, especially with his leadership, because we appeared in like a Vogue magazine, done a collaboration with Levi's, and then um, done a collaboration with the Bucks. So it's just been kind of up from there. And then in working with the brand, um, and then working into my marketing company, I started, especially when TikTok, the rise of TikTok and Instagram Reels started to happen. I started saying, hey, I know people need editors to editors to work out some of their short form content. So I worked with a lot of big players in the fitness industry, which kind of with my business partner. And so I kind of got lucky there. So they were really good testimonials for everything else. So yeah, I worked with different podcasts and different fitness influencers to just create short form content out of like the content they had out there already.
Mm.
So that was the best thing. That's another good, like not even side hustle I would call it. You can make a full business out of that, where um just editing already clips, because sometimes I'll get messages with editors that say, hey, I edited a clip from your podcast, check this out. And that's what I used to do for some clients as well. It's like, hey, I really loved your podcast, and I don't see you guys aren't posting on TikTok or Reels, and hey, I made this clip for you just to show you an example of stuff that we can do for you. And then I've gotten conversations like that, to a point where I don't have to do that anymore. But yeah, just to say and so through that, then came the podcast, which I do with my best friend that I went to college with. And me and him always had that dynamic of having conversation, having really funny conversations. And we've seen the reactions of people in person. So I was like, hey, let's start a podcast. We've been talking about it for so long. And the biggest investment we made was just like, okay, let's actually buy the equipment. So
Mm.
we're now forced to do this. And we started the podcast in 2021, and our first clip that we edited went like viral in a sense for us, like 200,000 views with
Yep.
the first clip. And so now we're sitting at on TikTok about 800,000 followers, and on Instagram is about 300,000. So we have like 1.4 million like combined across like all platforms. And
Wow.
then on our actual podcast, like the audio version, we get over like 200,000 plus listeners, and that's all in like 3 years. And just like the cool part is just like, and when I wanted to start the podcast, I want to really just say, hey, I want people to just like us for who we are and create that base like that. And we went into it with the mindset. I think there's an article, there's a book that was called like 1,000 True Fans,
Mm.
um, and and that really stuck with me since like high school or since college because um, it was basically saying you just need 1,000 people. If you get 1,000 super supporters to give you, say, $100 a month, right? That's really all you need. So it's when people, I said numbers and the big numbers right now, but people don't need that big of an audience to actually make, a living being a creator. If you can just like really dive in with your audience and make them feel like we create that relationship with them, it becomes something that you can actually live off being a full-time creator.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's just thinking about that scale, like even like 50 people in a room with you, right? If you have 50 diehard people in your life, like that's a full room. Like you don't you don't need a ton of people.
You don't,
So
and
that, I
that's why.
mean, that's well, I mean, I mean, you're throwing out numbers like that, like people dream about, right? That like,
Yeah.
any marketeer and any business, like people run businesses on this stuff. And like, what do you think is like the main differentiator for like you and your work? And like, what set, like what, how have you seen, like you went from ex NFL getting fired to now growing these platforms like crazy, just due to you being you, it seems like. And like, what is like the inherent, like one, if you could pinpoint one thing about yourself, like what do you think separates you from everybody else?
I think it's the way I watch content. And
Okay.
I've been told, like, I think I've been taught like the kind of annoying to watch like movies with sometimes because I'll like analyze the camera angle they're using. I'm looking at, okay, like the plot of like the climax of this scene hasn't happened yet, so something has to happen. Like this isn't the end of the scene. They're not going to end the scene like this. So I like hyper analyze a lot of the stuff that I watch, and what I've always really really focused on is the hook of any piece of content. And I always said the hook is like the most important part because like how do I stop this person? Because I feel like I know what's good content and what's bad content. So, but how do I get to the people to stop scrolling for 3 seconds just to give it a chance? So every time I work with clients and stuff like that, we always really, really hammer out the hook because everybody has really good information. I would usually work with people that have good information, but it's like, hey, how do I get this person to stop? And I think that's with anything. I forgot what's the lead magnet guy that gives you like the dollar book. Russell, I think I don't know. I don't know why
Oh,
his name is
Alex Hormozy.
Alex Hormozy is one of the people. But there's another one I forgot. I don't know why his name is escaping me, but it's a really popular marketing guy. But he basically, marketed a book for $1
Mm.
about creating funnels and stuff like that. And basically, the dollar book was the hook, and to get you to buy you know a larger an upsell pretty much. So it's like sometimes I always think about like content sometimes like as the upsell. Like we have
Mm.
this podcast now we're doing, you're going to cut a clip up to get people to actually go and listen to the full thing. So that's kind of like the thing that I always think about, like how do I drive traffic from this short clip that makes people want to give the whole thing a chance. So that, yeah, that's basically my
So,
ideas of like
so
just like thinking about like the
are you like neurotic in your everyday life when you like consume, like it sounds like you just like overanalyze everything, like even as like you
oh,
probably like are walking the grocery store, you're probably like, oh, this would make a
yeah.
cool shot.
Everything, whether it's like a photography standpoint, from a podcast standpoint. I sometimes like I need to turn it off, but it's like my mind is always like thinking of the next thing because that's kind of the downside of like content and just being in this content world. Even like in your world too, where you design stuff, is sometimes we're such in a microwave era where it's like you do something, you're proud of it, and it's like on to the next thing, right? Everything you just did is like it doesn't matter anymore. So that's like the problem. I want to find a balance between that. But it's like just playing the game right now. But I hope hopefully there's a time where content, music, designs, and stuff like that, stuff starts to come more timeless and in that aspect.
Mm. So you mentioned a little bit earlier even, and it kind of relates to this, is like you're at a point in your life now where you're trying to find a little bit more balance between all the things you're doing and your personal life. You know, from my standpoint, I don't really think of it as work-life balance. I just think of it as balance across the board, and like making sure that, you know, if I have a good day, I analyze that, realize what are the good aspects of the day and how do I replicate that for tomorrow. And then if I have a bad day, what are the bad things? What did I not like about it? Analyze it and then make sure that I don't do that again to not have another bad day. That's how I kind of dissect my days in order to find balance. But like, I'm curious to see like what, as you go through this stage in your life of figuring that out, like what's the biggest hurdle for you right now in terms of like why haven't you achieved balance yet?
I just think a lot of things were popping off at the same time. And it's kind of like a good problem to have, but it's also like the brand stuff is going so good, boxing is going so good, podcast is going so good, and everything's just rising at the same time. And then I'm keeping my head down, trying to edit, trying to do everything myself. So I think the biggest thing for me is delegation of
Mm,
like a task where there's stuff I still don't need to be doing, but it's hard for me to let that go and create time for stuff personally. So definitely getting better at that. I just being more of a delegator and being willing to having the patience to teach whoever I would bring on rather than thinking they should know everything right away and they should be in my head because I'm like a lot of stuff I do is so instinctual
mm,
that sometimes I feel like it's hard to teach. So, but just getting out of my own head and just like teaching, letting go, and being patient.
mm,
And I think the other thing that I think was that I've started to learn a little bit more is just like delayed gratification. Um, whereas that I would always want the when I do something happens, I just want it to like to reap the rewards right away because I'm like, oh, everything's been happening so fast and so good right now where I need to be more okay with just like things like in the long run and planning a little bit more for the future rather than the now and just
mm.
living life kind of like a little day to day.
Yeah, no, the delayed gratification aspect, I think, is like every creative across the board struggles with. So if you're at least thinking about it, I think you're ahead of most people because you're at least
Yeah.
acknowledging the challenge. Um, as you were speaking about that, like one question popped into my head of like, what's one thing that people misunderstand about you? Like you have this, you know, positive persona online, you know, you have this rising success, it seems like. What's something
Mm.
that nobody really gets about you?
Um, I think that obviously everybody goes through stuff and again with the online I'm in a comedy podcast so people so there's people that might think that oh they're just there having fun all the time talking with your friends. I'm like, yeah, it is fun, but I also go through real life stuff like anybody else does. And I think the hard part of being on the internet is like I've shot podcasts when I've been going through having the worst day and I still have to laugh, entertain,
Wow.
and seem somewhat interested in what we're talking about. So that's like the part that people might not get, and then having to like edit and clip everything. It's like the work that goes behind um, living the type of lifestyle and living like being a full time creator. It's definitely not easy. I'm not complaining by any means though, but it's definitely I wish there was an easier way to kind of, and I try to do that through I'm trying to do that more through my own personal page, but even just like the audience that we have cultivated, maybe just being more open with that on the podcast sometimes, like, hey, sometimes I might not be feeling it every time we shoot, and that's like, just bear with us,
Well,
So
so you
just today, I would say for the past 3 days, me and my friend been trying to shoot, because we shoot usually like on Sundays, maybe Mondays and Tuesdays. Sometimes it depends, but sometimes we really try to get a whole shoot done in one sitting. But sometimes it takes us 3 days because the energy is just not there, and
Mm.
we're like, hey, let's just come back tomorrow and try to shoot from this part and just wear the same clothes and stuff like that. So like that stuff happens all the time. I would wear the same outfit for 3 days, and and just because the energy isn't right, we're trying to put out the best product as possible.
So you bring up something that I really want to lean into a little bit, because I think a lot of creators who listen to this struggle with it themselves, right? Where you have to still put on a smile and execute your work when you really don't feel like it, whether you're burnt out or something in real life happens and you still have to go through it, right? And so how are you able to do that, right? Like if something in your life happens and then you have a content creation platform, so you're literally visibly facing. Some people don't have that, right? And they just have to show up at work and draw, for example, or design, which is a different beast. But you have to be camera facing. How are you able to wear that and like shove it to the side? Like, is that healthy? Because I don't think it is, like just from the outside looking in.
I
But
don't. I definitely think it is, and like something that I like recently started doing is actually just going to therapy too,
mm,
to actually talk to somebody about stuff like that, because it is something where you push stuff to the side. I could get into an argument with my significant other, and then you have to go and shoot a podcast, and it's almost like you were just angry 2 seconds ago, and now you're chuckling. So it's like, I don't know. It's a weird. I don't know how I do it, but it's definitely not super healthy. But it's definitely something that's you just. It's just for me. It's just like I think I've just gotten so far and having so much momentum. It's just like I'm able to push it to the side, because I'm like, I don't want to go back to just the normal, like the corporate life for
mm,
myself. I don't want. I want to be able to be doing this, and sometimes you have to do that. I just think about, like, I'm not saying I'm acting in a way, but I do think about when actors. I'm pretty sure when they're on set for months at a time, that they're not always feeling it, and
yes,
they
sir.
have to be camera facing as well. So there's just a special thing you might have just need to tap into here and there, but hopefully it's not something. It's not something that happens all the time. I try to, and it's not something that happens all the time. And usually on the days I'm shooting podcasts, I try to make those the best day. Like before that, I just like
Mm,
maybe even days leading up to it, mentally try to prepare myself, like do stuff that puts me in a good mood. But there's like, hey, just go box for a little bit, and sometimes I'll go box, I'll go run before shooting a podcast, just so I'm like, I still have that energy and I still have that motivation type to do it. But yeah, I think just moving has been like a big
yeah.
help for me.
Yeah, no, that I mean, I'm glad. It's kind of refreshing to hear that you don't have an answer yet, but you're again, you're
Yeah,
acknowledging it, and you're seeking help, and you're starting therapy. I've been seeing my therapist Kate for 5 years, and God bless her soul, because she's heard some shit over the years. So I think it's super healthy to talk to somebody, to vent. I actually, this is a theory that I'm working on, and I'm trying to talk to a lot of, like, I'll call them not young. I mean, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 32, and so like, not we're not young, but like we're not old either. Like we're still very youthful. But I think guys more or less our age struggle with venting and talking to other people about their challenges. I just don't think guys do this, and it's something I struggle with,
yeah,
and I'm trying to get a lot better at it, and I'm trying to figure out and have conversations about it as to the why behind, like, why do we struggle opening up? Females have no issue. They'll talk about
yeah,
whatever to their girlfriends, and guys just won't
yeah.
open up. And like, it's something that I just don't understand, and I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah. Something I've observed too as well. I'm 31, by the way, but yeah, I just think just how guys grew up, in a sense where you feel like you have to be the toughest guy. You can't cry. You can't do any of those things because it's not seen as a manly thing. That's when, especially with the venting thing, it's just like, why are you complaining? And I've always sometimes I get sometimes people put things in perspective. Like I like try to do that. Like I always do the oh it could be worse thing,
Hmm.
but just because it could be worse doesn't mean like I just think that everybody's like struggle is different, right? Like um I grew up in Section 8 housing, and somebody else could have grew up just slightly lower income. So you can't really compare like, oh, I grew up poorer than this person, so my upbringing is worse because especially being from Nigeria, because 50% of the population is in poverty. So if I see
Oh,
poverty all the time as a Nigerian, you just think that's the normal. But if you're over here, somewhere in America where you're a little bit below middle class and you live in a middle class area, then you're going to feel just as probably shitty as the person, in that third world country. So I like to keep perspective in things, but also like to acknowledge that what you're going through is actually a real thing that you're allowed to feel um, bad about or feel sad about and stuff like that. And just like, yeah, men having those conversations, I was I'm still like not trying to open up more. And again, I'm trying to work on that as well and have those conversations with guys about like mental health and stuff like that. Cause I'm new to therapy. It took me years. I've been saying I should go for literally just as amount of times you've been in therapy is the time I probably was saying I should go to therapy. And sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom with things to take those leaps, and hopefully people listen to this, and anybody that wants that sign and to go seek help. And there's a lot of like avenues where you can find affordable there's a lot of programs too that you can kind of look up and stuff like that to find more affordable like mental like therapists and stuff like that. So yeah, that was my biggest thing, was just being able to like open up more and have those conversations about like what's bothering me. And I've always been like the super nonchalant, like, no, that's all right. Like, just brush it off and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. It's a conversation that doesn't happen among men enough, I feel like.
it definitely doesn't. And I'm stoked that you're finally, you have this shift now. And you mentioned one of the things you do to set yourself up for a good day is, exercise and running and or go boxing. And I've this is one of my goals for 2024, which I haven't vocalized to anybody yet, but I really want to get punched in the fucking mouth, like in a ring. And like, it's just, I don't know why. I just want to feel it. And then like one
Yeah.
and done and like get that adrenaline rush. And like
Uh,
through like me watching, on social media, you recently joined, I think it was like it was like a real boxing match, and you like
yeah.
did all this content and the photography and the training videos of you running, and like it looked straight out of a fucking movie, dude. It was really beautifully
Yeah.
done. Obviously, now knowing your content background, I'm not surprised now, but it
Mm.
was truly a spectacle. And I'm curious as to like, why did you do it? Because like I'm fascinated. Like I really want to, for whatever reason, just get punched. I want to wear like a headset and stuff. I don't want to get knocked the fuck out, but like I want to.
Yeah.
So like I want to
Yeah,
know
that's
about
awesome.
your boxing journey, dude. I'm like fascinated
Yeah,
by it.
first of all, if you're ever in Milwaukee in the Midwest area, definitely come down to the gym.
Hell
Definitely
yeah.
uh, get you in the ring. But yeah, so I started boxing a year ago actually, and I really got into it because COVID happened. I was like, I wouldn't say overweight, but I was definitely heavier. It's like 248, which is like super heavy for me. And just wasn't motivated to do anything like competitive anymore since football. So I found this gym called Dropout in Milwaukee. Started boxing there literally just to lose weight, and so I was
Mm.
there, and then started really getting good at it. I think the advantage I had was time because I worked for myself. I didn't, so I could be there. I had a limited pass, and I was just there all the time boxing. And then I met my coach who works there too, or he owns the gym, and we started working together a little bit too. And then he just felt like, oh, you're getting really good at that. I was like, oh yeah. And then the gym hosts like a event, like kind of what you're talking about, where everybody, like the gym members get to train and they fight. Like they match you up pretty evenly, and then you wear headgear and stuff like that. So more so it's like you get to go through this like 8 week training camp on Saturdays, and like you're split into white team, the black team, and then that night's a big event. So I knew I wanted to do that, and and then also was a tournament in Wisconsin as well called the Wisconsin Golden Gloves, which is a, a, a tournament, just a boxing tournament. So I went and did that, and I ended up winning. So in the heavyweight division,
Oh wow.
and yeah, so then after that, a week later, I boxed in that gym event. I did really good in that. So after that event, and after I was doing good in those things, the conversation kind of came up as like, hey, do you want to just keep doing it amateurly with the headgear and stuff on? And I'm 31, like I don't have time to just like go and do the normal route that everybody does. They'll do amateur boxing for years before
Mm-hmm.
they go pro. And I'm a go-getter. So I was like, it's just my coach talked me into it, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go pro. And I trained for my first pro boxing fight in July and put in the work, and it was really an important thing for me to document everything because I didn't want people to think that just happened overnight and
Mm.
that I've been boxing for years or this and that. I want people to actually see that you can start this journey from any time. You don't have to do it to become a pro boxer. You can just like what you want to do, just want to get in there and get that adrenaline rush. A lot of people do it that way, and then you're gonna fall in love with it. It'd be something part of your routine because you run a lot too. So it's also really good cardio as well. So the cool thing about boxing is just one of those things where I've been in team sports all my life, and boxing was like that one sport where it's like I get in the ring, it's just me versus another person, and it's like it's very primal and very like uh kind of like an ego kind of thing. Just like you want to like say, hey, I worked hard than you, and that let me prove that I'm better than
Yeah.
you. They're standing across from me, and I like that every time. And it's like I can't blame anybody if I lose, and I can, you know, you obviously there's a team behind you and everybody that I wouldn't be able to be where I am without my team. But at the end of the day, they're not in the ring fighting for me, and they know that, and I know that. So I know like I have to just prove this to myself that I can go
So
out.
brother, like what people don't understand unless they go and research, and I hope to God people go to your page. You fought a pro fight of a human who was, in my opinion, a lot bigger than you. And you,
Yeah, yeah.
for whatever reason, got in that ring where I don't know if I would have.
Well, my original opponent who I was supposed to fight was we weighed the same, and he dropped out like a week before the fight. So
Oh,
I'm in a weight class where I'm really on the low end of the weight class, which next year I'm gonna be not fighting big dudes, bigger dudes like that anymore. But so I'm on the lower end. So like my coach calls me and it's like, "Hey Mike, your opponent dropped out. So we have this other dude. He's like 300 pounds." And I said, I was like, "F it, let's do it." Like because at that and I talked about I have a video on my page where I like the morning of the fight where I just made a video. I sat there as I knew I wanted to make a video that morning of the fight because I'm gonna feel something and I want to just speak how I feel. And obviously I was nervous, but I saw him fight and I'm like, I'm confident I can beat him. Obviously just don't get hit. Um, and yeah, I wasn't at that point. I put in so much work. I was like, I don't care if they tell me I have to fight Mike Tyson, young Mike Tyson that day. I would have still got in there and and fought because I don't know. It's just to prove something to myself. I needed that, and it's just something I worked so hard for, and that's why at the end of the fight only lasted like a minute, and at the end of the fight, there's a scene of me jumping on the ring and like screaming, and like that was probably I always say like I wish I could like bottle up that feeling and just like you save it for a rainy day because like jumping up on that ring and just like letting all that energy out is like it's such a surreal feeling that I just don't even know how to describe. It's just like, again, it's such a primal thing. I know like the medieval people there are doing like the jousting and stuff like that. That's probably how they felt back then too. So it's like one of those things when you win something that you've been putting the work in. And I documented this. I went live with my audience and comedy podcast. So like obviously people are cracking jokes here and there to like, just like giving, just funny stuff like that. But I put a lot of pressure on myself because I don't think anybody really goes through that type of pressure, just like their first pro fight. But it's like also being a content creator, it's a lot of pressure because there's a lot of eyeballs on you. But yeah, I saw an opportunity and I know I don't have long to do this, so it's like, why not now? I don't want to get older and like regret, like, oh, I should have just did it, and it's too late. I don't want to box till I'm 40, you know. So I want to do it while I'm semi young, and yeah, and just see where it goes.
Well, dude, it was awesome to watch as like just a bystander, through social media, and it was wildly inspirational. And so I really hope that everybody does their homework, reaches out to you, and watches some of those videos, look back on it. Mike, this has been beyond my wildest dreams of an episode on this podcast. This has been superb, and I can't extend thanks enough for you joining and talking about and sharing all your stories with us.
Yeah.
One last thing, if there's one message that you can leave the audience or the world, or anything you want to be remembered by, or a piece of advice to a kid, or anything that comes to your mind, what would be one tidbit for anybody listening, as we wrap up?
My one thing is like never stop learning.
Mm.
And I think I've been a lifelong learner. Ever since I was a kid, I always like, I was never like, I was okay at school, but I was not learning in the sense of like books in a sense, but more just like how things work. I just always like, always stayed like really curious. And I said, learning, stay curious about things, how things work, how things operate. And because you never can, I know you're in the design industry, there's stuff that you're still learning, you learn every day on the job or not on the job. But yeah, always keep learning, always looking for how this one product could be better the next time, you know? Like that's my thing. Just I just always want to keep learning and being exposed to um, different things that I may not know, because I know I don't know everything. So, but as much knowledge I can get, I think it's just gonna help me in the long run.
Hell yeah. No, that's a great piece of advice. Where can people find you? Are you on all social media? It sounds like you're on everything. And where do
Yeah,
where,
but also
where do people find you, dude?
yeah, Instagram's my main Instagram. You can find me. It's just Mike.esiobu. And then from there, in my link in my bio, you can find everything else. Like the Crash Dummies page, the clothing brand, and everything else I kind of do. You can find just in my bio as well.
I hope everybody goes and studies your content, man. I know I am going to, and
Yeah.
keep inspiring people. Keep doing what you're doing, man. This has seriously been an awesome show, and I appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you, man.